tell who truly respects you by how they act when they believe you have nothing to give. I didn't come looking for drama that day. I came searching for truth. What I found instead changed the way I understood love, pride, and family. The cold wind bit at my face as I stepped off the bus, clutching the torn handle of my faded brown tote bag. The leather scraped against my palm, grounding me. My old wool coat, patched, rough, and dull at the edges, wasn't about fashion or warmth. It was my disguise. That morning, I wasn't dressing to impress anyone. I was preparing for a test, one that would reveal who really belonged in my life. My fiancé's mother, Mrs. Latham, had never believed I was good enough for her son, Darius. And today, I was going to see exactly how she treated me when she thought every rumor she'd whispered about me was true. Darius stood by the curb, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, the tension written across his shoulders. When his eyes met mine, I could see the worry behind them. "You don't have to do this, Taylor," he murmured as I approached. "We could just tell her everything. She'll come around eventually." I smiled faintly, pulling my scarf tighter around my neck. "She's never really given me a chance, Darius. In her eyes, I've always been some small-town girl chasing her son's paycheck. This time, I want to see how she treats me when she thinks she's right." He exhaled heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. "She's not a bad person, Tay. Just old-fashioned." "I know," I said softly. "That's why I need to know if she could ever love me, not the version she thinks I should be." We started walking toward the Latham house, a tall, pale brick colonial that sat at the end of a tree-lined street in Silver Springs, Maryland. The home itself seemed to stare down at me, pristine and intimidating, like it already knew I didn't belong. Before we reached the front porch, the door opened. Mrs. Latham appeared, poised and polished, wrapped in an ivory sweater set with pearls around her neck. Her eyes swept over me, from my weathered boots to my chipped nail polish, and something sharp flickered behind her polite smile. "Taylor," she said smoothly, "you made it. Please, leave your shoes by the door." Behind her, Mr. Latham emerged, softer in tone and appearance. His smile was genuine, his warmth immediate. "Welcome, sweetheart. Make yourself at home." I returned his smile, even as my stomach tightened. I wasn't here for comfort. I was here for clarity, to see the truth behind the smiles. Inside, the living room looked like something from a magazine, spotless, symmetrical, almost sterile. Every cushion sat perfectly fluffed, every photo frame aligned like part of an exhibit. Mrs. Latham poured tea with surgical precision, sliding a cup toward me without breaking her composure. "So," she began coolly, "where are you working these days?" "Just a small administrative job," I answered modestly. "Phones, filing, helping out where I can." Her eyebrow rose slightly. "Well," she said, her lips curving just enough to suggest judgment, "it may not pay much, but at least it's steady work." Darius shifted beside me, ready to defend me, but I rested a hand on his knee beneath the table. "Not yet. And where are you two living now?" she asked. "Still renting, I assume?" "Yes," I said quietly. She gave a soft, knowing laugh. "The housing market isn't kind to everyone. You know, Darius, the Patterson girl, just bought her second property, and she just made partner at her firm." The words hit like tiny blades, but I'd expected that. This wasn't just small talk. It was a test of my patience, of how much condescension I could swallow before breaking. "Mom," Darius said sharply, "Taylor and I are happy. That's what matters." Mrs. Latham leaned back, crossing her legs. "Happiness is lovely, dear, but it doesn't pay the bills." Her voice was calm, but the undertone was crystal clear. "You're not enough for my son." I took a small sip of tea to mask the lump rising in my throat. She looked at my frayed sleeves again, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "When I first met you," she said, "I thought you were sweet, but I can see you never really adjusted to the city." I smiled faintly, not rising to the bait. I wanted her to keep talking, because sometimes people reveal everything when they think they've already won. Darius shifted beside me again, his patience thinning. "Mom, that's enough," he said, his jaw tight. "You don't know everything about Taylor." Mrs. Latham didn't flinch. She simply placed her cup down with a delicate click. "What is it I don't know, dear? She works a simple job, you two are still renting, and—" her gaze flicked toward me like a judgmental spotlight. She didn't even think to dress for the occasion. What impression does that leave? I could feel Darius bristling, but I pressed my hand against his arm again. Let her talk, I whispered. My voice was calm, even though my chest felt tight. I wasn't here to defend myself. I was here to see her truth. Mrs. Latham folded her arms. You're both adults, and love is fine, but love doesn't build a home. It doesn't raise children or secure a future. When the bills come and the pressure hits, will love still be enough? Her tone was cool, but her words burned. Darius opened his mouth to speak, but I shook my head slightly. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about watching her reveal who she really was when no one was performing. Dinner followed, a formal table set with polished silver, linen napkins, and plates that probably hadn't seen a real meal in years. The aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, but the tension made every bite taste like paper. Mr. Latham tried to lighten the mood, talking about weather, neighborhood fundraisers, and community drives, anything to pull us away from the edge. But his wife wasn't done. So, Mrs. Latham said as she carved her meat with surgical precision, do you two plan to marry before or after you figure things out financially? Her words dripped with condescension disguised as concern. We haven't set a date yet, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Well, she said, dabbing her mouth with her napkin, I just worry. My son worked so hard for his position. He deserves someone who can match that, not hold him back. The air froze. Even the clinking of forks stopped. Darius started to speak, but this time I didn't stop him. Mom, he said, his voice low but firm, you don't have to worry about Taylor. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm sure she is, dear. I just expected you to be with someone more established. You always dreamed big. Her words landed like quiet thunder. I could see Mr. Latham glance at her with a weary sigh, but he stayed silent, a man too used to his wife's sharp edges to challenge them anymore. The rest of dinner played out in uneasy silence. Every fork scrape felt louder than it should have. Every polite smile was another mask. When dessert was cleared, Mrs. Latham rose gracefully, glancing at the clock. Well, it's time for my show, she said, turning on the television. Darius rolled his eyes quietly. Her evening talk shows are sacred, he murmured, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. On screen, a cheerful host's voice boomed through the room. Tonight, we have an incredible guest, business innovator and CEO of Bright Path Education, Taylor Brooks. The room went still. My heart thudded once, hard. There I was on screen, wearing a soft gray suit, my hair sleek, my smile confident. The caption read, Taylor Brooks, CEO and co-founder of Bright Path Education, empowering inner-city youth through technology. Mrs. Latham froze mid-step. Her teacup trembled in her hand. She blinked. Once. Twice. Her eyes darting from the television to me, sitting quietly across from her in my old wool coat. What is this? She whispered. Her voice had lost all its sharpness. I set my hands gently on the table. That's me, I said simply. The job you didn't ask about. The one you assumed I wasn't capable of. The screen cut to me, my recorded self, talking about building Bright Path with my husband, Darius, and how our mission was to help children in underserved communities get access to education and technology. Mrs. Latham's breath caught audibly. You, she said again, almost in disbelief. That's really you? Yes, I said softly. I wanted to meet you as a person, not a resume. For the first time that evening, her perfect composure cracked. The color drained from her face, and the silence that filled the room wasn't uncomfortable, it was humbling. She looked between the screen and me, as though trying to connect two different worlds that had suddenly collided in her living room. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the low hum of the television. Mrs. Latham's eyes flicked between me and the screen. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. On screen, the host was smiling as the segment continued. She's also a wife, the woman said brightly, married to software engineer Darius Brooks, head of development at Bright Path Education, the power couple transforming digital learning for kids nationwide. Mrs. Latham's gaze darted toward her son. You two built that company? Darius nodded quietly, his expression unreadable. Yeah, Mom. From our apartment. We didn't want to make a big announcement. We wanted to build it first. She turned back to the TV, still in disbelief. There I was, discussing grant partnerships, mentorship programs, and our 8-month-old daughter, Lena, named after my grandmother. "You're a mother?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. "Yes," I said, my tone gentle. "Lena's at home with my cousin tonight." Her hand went to her mouth, and for the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. "I didn't know. You never said anything." I met her eyes steadily. "You never asked." Her composure cracked, not from embarrassment but realization. All those judgments she'd made so confidently were collapsing around her. Mr. Latham's warm voice broke the silence. I knew the name Bright Path sounded familiar. "You're the one who donated all those tablets to the community school." I smiled. "That's us. We started small, one neighborhood at a time." Darius reached for my hand, squeezing it. "I tried to tell you, Mom," he said softly, "but you were too busy comparing Taylor to everyone else." Mrs. Latham's chin trembled. "I thought you were just ordinary," she whispered. "I am," I replied. "I just wanted you to see who I was before you saw what I do." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked back at the screen, where the host was laughing with me, my TV self, about perseverance, motherhood, and faith. Then she turned back to me, voice breaking. "I was wrong. I've been wrong since the beginning." I leaned forward slightly, calm but firm. "I didn't do this to humiliate you, Mrs. Latham. I needed to know if you could love me when you thought I had nothing to offer." Tears slipped down her cheeks, tracing lines through her carefully applied makeup. "Can you forgive me?" she asked, voice small. "I already have," I said softly, "because I know you were just trying to protect your son. You didn't want him hurt or struggling." "I understand that." Her shoulders slumped, years of pride melting away in front of us. The polished perfection she wore like armor began to crack, revealing something raw and human underneath. Mr. Latham placed a hand on her back, his voice gentle. "Evelyn," he said, calling her by name for the first time that night, "you've always wanted what's best for him. Maybe now you can see he already found it." She nodded slowly, trembling. The sharpness in her eyes was gone, replaced by something fragile. "Shame, yes, but also hope." "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "You already started," I said. "You're here. You're listening." The house felt different then, softer, warmer, as if something heavy had finally been lifted. Mrs. Latham reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was shaky but real. "I'm proud of you, Taylor," she said through quiet tears. "I never said that before, but I mean it." The words hit deeper than I expected. For months I'd imagined confrontation, not compassion. Hearing them, real, trembling, human, made my throat tighten. "Thank you," I murmured. Darius's hand found mine again, strong and steady. For the first time since we arrived, I let myself breathe fully. The air in the Latham home no longer felt cold, it felt alive. The next afternoon, I was folding laundry when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw the Latham sedan pull into our driveway. Darius looked up from the couch, startled. "They didn't say they were coming." I smiled faintly. Maybe that's a good thing. When the doorbell rang, Darius opened it to find his mother standing there, clutching a stuffed bear almost as big as our daughter. The back seat of their car overflowed with shopping bags. "I didn't know what little girls like these days," she said, her voice nervous but kind. "So, I bought a few things." Darius chuckled. "A few? Mom, this looks like you emptied the whole store." "Nonsense," she said softly, her tone different now, unsure but sincere. "It's my first time meeting my granddaughter." I stepped forward, holding Lena in my arms. For a second, Mrs. Latham froze. Her eyes widened as they met the baby's dark curls and sleepy gaze. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "She looks just like you, Taylor." Lena reached out a tiny hand toward her. Mrs. Latham hesitated, then stepped closer, her movements cautious, reverent. When Lena's small fingers brushed her cheek, she gasped, the sound breaking something open inside her. "She doesn't even know me," she said, voice cracking. "She knows family," I replied gently. "She can feel it." Tears welled in her eyes. She took Lena into her arms, and for the first time, the room filled with something pure, laughter, tenderness, peace. The visit that followed felt like a dream. Mr. Latham helped Darius assemble the new playpen in the living room while his wife knelt on the rug, stacking colorful blocks with our daughter. Mrs. Latham asked about nap times, favorite songs, and baby food. She laughed when Lena smeared puree across her face, and instead of frowning like before, she wiped it away with a smile. At one point, she glanced at me and whispered, "I thought success meant money, titles, being respected. But this," she gestured toward Lena, "this is what really matters." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "What matters most is showing up," I said softly. "You're doing that now." That evening, as we sat on the porch drinking lemonade, Mrs. Latham's voice was quiet but certain. "I was so afraid of losing my son to the wrong person that I didn't see who he was becoming or who you already were. I don't deserve your kindness." I smiled, my heart full. "You already have it," I said. "It's never too late to start again." She looked down at Lena sleeping in her arms. "I used to think family was about expectations," she said. "Now I see it's about grace." When they finally left, she hugged me tightly. It wasn't the kind of hug people give out of obligation. It was the kind that says thank you for not giving up on me. And for the first time, it felt like we were truly family. A few weeks later, Darius and I decided to visit my hometown so his parents could finally meet mine. As we drove, Mrs. Latham, or Evelyn, as she now asked me to call her, sat in the back seat, twisting the strand of pearls around her neck. "What if they don't like me?" she whispered. "What if they know how I treated you?" I glanced at her in the rearview mirror and smiled. "They'll see the woman you are now. That's all that matters." When we arrived, my mother greeted us with open arms, her warmth instantly melting the tension. Within minutes, she and Evelyn were in the garden, laughing over hydrangeas and swapping recipes. Inside, Mr. Latham and my father bonded over baseball and barbecue techniques like old friends. As I watched them all together, laughing, talking, building something new, a wave of peace settled over me. The pain from before didn't vanish, but it had transformed into something softer, wiser. Later that night, beneath a wide Carolina sky, Darius wrapped his arms around me. "You changed everything," he murmured against my hair. "You gave her a chance she didn't deserve." I leaned back into him, watching the stars blink faintly above. She just needed to see who she really was, without pride in the way. When we got home a few days later, Evelyn came by again. She started visiting regularly now, twice a week, sometimes more. She brought biscuits, baby books, and an endless supply of hugs for Lena. One quiet afternoon, as she rocked Lena to sleep, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for naming her after your grandmother," she said softly. "I don't deserve that honor, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it." "You already are," I said. "Just being here, loving her, that's everything." She smiled down at the baby's tiny face. "I used to care about status, appearances, and what people thought," she said. "Now I realize none of that compares to this. To showing up. To loving for real." I nodded, my chest tightening with quiet joy. "Exactly. Family isn't about proving yourself. It's about choosing to stay." She looked at me then, really looked, her eyes soft and full. "You gave me back my son," she whispered. "And you gave me a granddaughter who knows nothing but love. I'll never forget that." I smiled. "We didn't fix the past, Evelyn. We just decided to start building something better." She nodded slowly, rocking Lena's cradle with one gentle hand. "Then let's keep building." For a moment, everything was still, the faint hum of the house, the quiet rhythm of Lena's breathing, the golden sunlight slanting through the window. And in that stillness, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about giving grace where pride once stood. It's about letting love win.